Many of us are familiar with such masterpieces as Van Gogh's Sunflowers and Starry Night, Gauguin's Where Do We Come From, Where Are We, Where Are We Going, or Beethoven's Ode to Joy. What do these great artists have in common? Besides their talent and diligence to their crafts, they all had syphilis. It is commonly believed that syphilis was originally spread through Europe by sailors returning from the New World, though there's little evidence to fully support this theory. So where does syphilis actually originate? The answer varies around the world, as does the name. For example, it has been called the French disease by the Italians, the Neapolitan disease by the French, the Polish disease by the Russians, the Germanic disease by the Poles, Tang sores by the Japanese, and Guangzhou sores by people from the north of the Five Ridges in China. Understandably, no one would take responsibility for the disease. It wasn't until 1530 when Italian physician and poet Girolamo Fracastoro composed his epic poem Syphilis Sive Morbis Gallicus about a shepherd boy named Syphilis who insulted the Greek god Apollo and was punished with a horrible disease. This disease has since borne the name of the protagonist, syphilis. So what exactly is syphilis? The source of syphilis is a bacterium called Treponema pallidum, which wasn't discovered until about 400 years after its first outbreak. Initial symptoms of the disease may include ulcers on the genitals, though not usually very painful and tend to disappear after a month or so. Because of this, people often think they've recovered and see no cause for concern for anywhere from a month and a half upwards to a year. After this incubation period begins the appearance of skin rashes and ulcers all over the body, which can be very painful and even result in disfigurement. If the disease remains untreated, it will eventually attack the rest of the body, leading to organ failure and finally death. In addition to this, the disease also affects the nervous system. When the bacterium makes its way to the brain, a person can suffer incoherence, hallucinations, illusions of grandeur, or even violent behavior. It's common knowledge that syphilis is sexually transmitted, which may cause a person to feel shame and attempt to hide their condition. In fact, this has resulted in some interesting stories and even holds historical significance. For example, the young French king Louis XIV and his cousin King Charles II of England both suffered from syphilis, causing alopecia, or hair loss. Being royal figureheads and the trendsetters of their time, these two kings were not prepared to be seen bald in public and began wearing powdered wigs, which soon became fashionable among the nobles. To this day, these wigs can still be seen as part of the uniform worn in courts of law. Syphilis would commonly cause the nose to rot and become deformed, what is today known as saddle nose. Italian surgeon Gaspare Tagliacozzi developed a method to deal with this deformity. First, the patient's arm would be fixed to their head and have the damaged nose sewn to the upper arm. After the nose and arm had grown together, they would once again be surgically separated, and the new nose would be reformed to the proper size and shape. Though this procedure was not always successful, and the newly formed nose had a tendency to fall off again, many considered this the birth of cosmetic surgery, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry and has led to many successful careers for plastic surgeons worldwide. Once syphilis had become rampant through 16th century Europe, people tried various methods to treat the disease. One method was to simply remove the rotted parts. When the genitals festered, people would cut them off. Others believed that binding the penis tightly with rope would prevent the spread of infection, but to no avail. By the 17th century, people thought that having sex with a healthy virgin would help expel the syphilis out of the body. As absurd as it may seem, this superstition still exists. After syphilis infects the nervous system, the patient can suffer mania, depression, insanity, and schizophrenia. While this is truly terrible for the patients, it is arguable that the negative effects of syphilis have resulted in some of mankind's greatest works. Many people have heard the inspiring story of German composer Ludwig van Beethoven from an early age, who continued composing after going deaf. But few people know that his deafness was caused by syphilis. Under the psychedelic hallucinations and schizophrenia caused by the disease, he composed his Ode to Joy. The poet Heine once remarked that Beethoven's music contained the sounds of ghosts and the mark of death, which may have been a sign that the syphilis had invaded the nervous system. At Beethoven's funeral, it was Schubert who carried the torch, and also died of syphilis the next year. Schubert rarely stepped outside the house during the infection because he was afraid of being seen with the disease, though the news was leaked out by his family physician anyway. When the news of Schubert's death reached composer Robert Schumann, he cried out not only for Schubert, but because he himself was also syphilitic. He suffered from intermittent neurosis, possibly caused by the syphilis, which may have affected his brain at the time. German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "To live alone is the fate of all great souls." He lived up to this motto and never married, but he too was believed to have been infected with syphilis. French novelist Gustave Flaubert, with his casual and elegant-bearing lifestyle, experienced serious syphilopsychosis before his death. His protege, Guy de Maupassant, also died of syphilis and spent the last year and a half of his life in a mental hospital. Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh preserved his purity and lived an abstinent life, but often went to a brothel for what he called physical exercise. As expected, he suffered from syphilis. Syphilis may have caused the psychosis which filled Van Gogh's paintings with such passion and led him to take his own life. Van Gogh's roommate, French artist Paul Gauguin, once shared the same prostitute with Van Gogh in France. Unfortunately, he was also infected with syphilis. Suffering from the illness terribly, Gauguin also tried to kill himself as his friend had. However, after several failed attempts, he finally died from his disease. These stories remind us that when praising great works of art, for there's no doubt that there must be something great in them, we must also remember some of them may simply have been born out of insanity brought on by illness, then overanalyzed and even mythologized by later generations. Though we've done our best to eliminate these invisible bacteria, they've left us with powerful visible effects that have changed bodies, influenced thoughts, and even led to the creation of some of mankind's greatest treasures. Thanks for watching this episode of Thinking Spam. If you want to learn more novel and interesting facts, don't forget to click the button below and subscribe.